hurting us from a community standpoint. It's incumbent to try and recapture the Medicaid payments that were made. But in this case, the value of the property is far less than the $100,000 liability that sits on it. So the market won't absorb it. Just one example of situations we run into. It's much better, obviously, to have property in the condition it is on the right without the Medicaid lien on it and without the tax liability on it and it being reused. Here's another example of one that I thought was pretty stark myself, of a different program. We call this one a different program where somebody comes to us and we're reacting to an individual who has indicated they have an interest in a property on Hoover Avenue in Trotwood. I'm not sure if my triage team would have said this is a demolition candidate instead of a reuse candidate, but somebody came to us and said they would like it. In this program, we do diligence on the applicant to make sure that they have the capability and the financial capacity to make improvements to a property like this. In this case, the individual did, and then ultimately turned that property into this. So again, pretty stark contrast from what we saw earlier. I'm not sure, again, if the other property, I would have thought it was salvageable, but somebody did. And so again, much better for the community, taxes being paid, huge improvement for the property owner next door, you can imagine. And what really struck me about this one is a gentleman, or lady, whoever the individual is, has actually built raised beds in the backyard for their garden. So doing a lot of work there. So these kind of things can be done by individuals. Our concern is to make sure that properties get into the hands of somebody, again, who has the capability, either skill sets and the financial capacity to do it, and they don't get themselves in over their head. And that is a risk of these kinds of programs. Well-meaning, but again, getting in over their heads. We run commercial programs. We're very proud to say that we were involved with the initiation of the arcade, getting it out from underneath. It had $600,000 of tax liability on it. Effectively, our role in this is kind of helping the government determine that this tax liability is not collectible. So in this case, we took ownership of this property and ultimately deeded it to the city, who provided it to the developer. Another situation here where in the top photograph, you might recognize this from 5th Street, the Dayton Chess Club here, very beautiful little building that's going to be renovated by a firm out of Columbus. Their concern was the adjoining property here, which used to be a costume shop. There was $50,000 worth of tax liability on this one. We showed in the top right-hand corner, the treasurer's office, that it was unlikely they were going to collect $50,000 on that property because the hole in that roof, where you see the star, there is actually a ladder, and we're looking into the next floor of the building. And this hole is substantial in size. So you can imagine how many years water's been pouring into it. I'm surprised that the structure has remained standing. But in this particular deal structure, the developer agreed to pay for the acquisition of it and then agreed to tear it down, and it is now down. And we transferred the property to them. So we're trying to advance these properties that are distressed. I mean, effectively is the bottom line for us. Here's another example of a property in the Carillon neighborhood. This was a former machine tool shop. We were able to acquire this property. It was not tax delinquent, by the way, but we engaged with the owner, acquired it, and then Vera Lee, the 115 group, has come in, and they are building an opioid treatment facility there. In fact, the outpatient center is complete, and the first phase of the residential housing that you see illustrated here has been complete as well. Something very important to our communities, since the opioid epidemic was so impactful to our community. And finally, we've gotten involved in, this is a more suburban example here, where there was a car wash, gas station, nail salon, video rental, just about everything. In this particular facility, a blight on the landscape on Main Street and this is West Carrollton. We were able to work out a deal that the environmental liability associated with that site could be remediated under our ownership. And then ultimately, Kettering Medical Center is going to build a facility not too dissimilar to this one shown in the picture below as a result. So again, that property wasn't moving forward because of a variety of reasons. There was a note on it. It was bad debt, it had debt taxes, it had environmental liability. So a problem property that not normally people would run into. Certainly in the investors market, investors aren't really getting interested in getting involved in something like that. And our role was to reposition the property so it could be reused. And that will happen there. We also have provided a number of planning grants over the years to a variety of different organizations and entities. The Choice Neighborhood Program, Community Choice, Five Rivers Metro Parks, West Carrollton, Clayton, and a variety of others. And that just sets the stage for those communities to develop a vision. In this case, it's West Carrollton had a vision for this geography right in their downtown, which was a former paper mill, to be used as a sportsplex. And interestingly enough, a volleyball complex has been constructed there now. So they were forward thinking in terms of what they do there. And so repurposing that property from its former life as a paper mill. Where we're going now, and what really initiated the conversation with Miami Valley leadership is what we call, what I'm going to refer to here as our next generation of programming. Thus far, much of what we've done has been to stabilize residential neighborhoods. And we want to raise the bar. In other words, the land bank has certain capabilities available to us, certain authorities available to it. We are really good at tearing stuff down. Done a lot of demolition over the years, and that's great. In vacant abandoned structures that can't be reused, to go in, there's great relief on the part of the neighboring property owners when you come in and take a property like that down for health and safety reasons at a minimum, but also devaluation of properties and so forth. And so we've been doing that, and we've been doing the renovation programs at a level, but what we wanted to do is start to look a little deeper into the neighborhood itself, to look if there were other things that could be done in a neighborhood to make it sustainable. So again, if the land bank is operating on its own, it can stabilize neighborhoods to the extent it has the financial resources, human resources available to it. But there are other issues in these neighborhoods that are largely social in nature, challenges, that need to be addressed to make the neighborhoods sustainable. And we saw this in our first pilot neighborhood, which is where we tried to take a look at this, which is a neighborhood called Pineview. Pineview is, its location on this map is very close to the VA, which is up in here, Gettysburg Avenue, excuse me, I'm in the wrong location here, Gettysburg, Route 35, in Germantown Pike. And the VA is this purplish kind of color area here, aerial view of it here. Interestingly enough, there used to be an amusement park at one point in time, as I was told. And that reminds me, I grew up in Cincinnati, it reminds me of Coney Island. And I guess there was a whole diorama out there of the Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg out in that location at one time. But it's a really nice, cute little neighborhood. And when we were asked to take a look at this neighborhood to see what it is we might be able to do to help support it, we did some analysis. And I know you can't read this little map in the middle here, but what we found was there were 60 of the 300 roughly properties in a neighborhood. There were 60 properties in there that were tax delinquent. The University of Dayton did a study of the neighborhood, and they found that to a large extent there were the population demographically was aging. And so we began to wonder, well, what is it that might be able to be done for this neighborhood to help support it? And when we began to look at the vacant abandoned properties, largely they were located along Gettysburg Avenue here. There are a few properties within what we would call the fabric of the neighborhood here, but a lot of them were right along Gettysburg. So if you were a potential buyer of a home and you saw there was a house available in the Pineview neighborhood, quite frankly, you might just continue driving by if you saw the vacant abandoned properties on the outside. It just did not give you the kind of appearance that you would want for the neighborhood. I'm going to bring this forward. There we go. So we identified various properties along Gettysburg here. The black X's, circles with X's, are houses that we felt really had to be demolished. There were houses that were on payment plans. We felt there were others that potentially could get onto tax payment plans. The orange circles were, they were delinquent, but less than a year. And so we were talking to the treasurer's office about outreach programs to get the individuals that were there on payment plans, because the treasurer's office will work with these individuals so that they're not in jeopardy later on of being foreclosed upon. Because after 3 years of delinquency, the norm is people cannot catch up any longer. There were various properties in here where there were still some active utilities going on, so it suggested as they were still occupied, but nonetheless they were delinquent. So we worked with Citywide Development, and Citywide is actually the organization that asked us to take a look at the neighborhood. And as we were collecting all this information and analyzing what it was, there was community engagement going on with Citywide. So they were engaging the neighborhood to ask the neighborhood what they were interested in doing. This is a typical planning process. They ask the neighborhood, what's deficient here? What's our strengths? What's our weaknesses? What's the threats to the neighborhood, and so forth. And you end up with sessions as photographed here. This is actually in Miamisburg, where there's discussions about those things. And we put all of that into a process, and we get data back out of it in terms of what are the objectives for the neighborhood. In one of the interesting pieces that we found in Pineview was the very, very low valuations of properties. And here, I asked staff to go out and find comparable neighborhoods to Pineview. We have these types of structures all over our community. So it wasn't very difficult to find them. Pineview, at its high point in 2006, which is just before the bubble, of course, $44 a square foot was the valuation. So a typical house in Pineview is 1,000 square feet. So typical house was selling for $44,000. After the bubble burst, property values went down to as low as $11 a square foot. So you could buy a Pineview home for $11,000. I imagine most of us have cars that probably exceed that. But when we looked at what was really startling, we did Madden Hills, similar kind of result here. When we looked at this Edgewood neighborhood in Salem Village, what we saw is at their low point, they were at $64.59. And at their highs, they were at $91 and $89. So this disparity was huge. And you could account for it in part by location, i.e. proximity to amenities, school system. There are conditions of the properties and so forth. But that is just an enormous variation. So one of the objectives that we had for the neighborhood was to try and raise property values. So as we looked at our specific set of objectives, removing blight was number one, raising property values was number two, and generating market awareness of this very cute little enclave in this neighborhood of its existence. So as a part of our commitment to Under Thriving Neighborhoods, in conjunction with the city of Dayton, we have removed a considerable amount of blight. I think we're around 25 houses at this point in time that have been demolished as part of that program. And then we committed to renovating ourselves 4 properties to create new comps in the neighborhood. What we were hearing from the lending institutions was that they could not, in fact, lend more than comparables in the area. So we wanted to create new comparables and restore some of the wealth to the residents that own properties in that neighborhood. And then ultimately generate the market awareness. And we got two of our homes in the Home Builders Association Parade of Homes in the fall of 2019. So the Parade of Homes was really kind of a coup for us. And the Home Builders Association was excited to do that. So we've had three rehabs, 27 demolitions. We've had philanthropy put into the neighborhood. A UAW organization came in, and there's a very nice spring-fed pond here that has been cleaned up by the neighborhood. They did a cleanup there with citywide development, rebuilding together. I'll let Amy describe the work that they've done there. But they came in and did some other work. We have Able Law providing legal aid services there, and Citywide has been doing planning. So the point of showing this slide is the land bank is only on the first two bullets here. And our interest in stabilizing a neighborhood, we can pull this off. We can't do a fishing pier. We can't do a parking lot by the lake. We can't do what Amy does in terms of harnessing volunteers to do the various things that she's done. We don't provide legal counseling, right, for the folks who are tax delinquent. And in this case, we did not do the planning for the neighborhood itself. This I would refer to as basically a capital stack. This is an attempt to bring a variety of different organizations to the table to achieve the neighborhood's objectives. Fundamental. We can do a great job here in the top two, but when you start getting into these other spaces, that's beyond our mission. And although it might stabilize the neighborhood, it does not necessarily make it sustainable in the long term, because the 60 properties that I referenced earlier in Pineview that were tax delinquent, yeah, we may have torn down 25 of them, or 27 in this case, but there still remains 30 that are delinquent. And something needs to be done. Otherwise, we may be back in there next year tearing down more houses because they've been left vacant and abandoned for various reasons. So it's an attempt to go deeper dive into the neighborhood and help facilitate and raise the bar in terms of what's accomplished there. Just to give you some feel for what these properties look like, here was the first one we renovated. Remember I said at the bottom end, it was $11 a square foot. At the top end, it was $44 a square foot. First house we renovated, we sold for $61 a square foot. We lost money on that, by the way, but we consider it to be an investment in the neighborhood. The second house we did, we sold for $65,000 or $69 a square foot. And then the third sold for $83 a square foot, a little Cape Cod there. So incrementally, we kept pushing valuations up. What that did is for the aging population in that neighborhood, if they desired to sell and move on, we've demonstrated that properties in this neighborhood have greater value than what was heretofore shown on the chart. And that gives them a certain amount of mobility, right? Because now they have wealth. They have more wealth than they had before. You know, how much could be a topic for debate. How much did this really improve or move the needle for each particular property? But I would argue that it did. And it did allow for the lenders to get more involved there. So this is the kind of thing that we're doing. Again, going back to the Leadership Foundation, you know, our interest is there a role here perhaps, you know, for the organization? When Jay mentioned the relationship with the churches, it was, well, clearly, you know, we've had numerous discussions with churches in the community. Vanessa, I'm looking at you, and there's no question about the work that you all have done there, which is just incredible. The churches are interested in doing very positive things in the communities. Sometimes our guidance, quite honestly, with churches is be careful and don't overextend yourself. That's a personal guidance, if you will, that don't get yourself too far out there. But there are things that can be done that are not long-term commitments or necessarily huge financial commitments. They could be volunteer type work. And that's where Amy comes in. Amy, I think at this point, I'd like to hand the ball off to you and let you describe how you've now taken the work, sort of setting the table here, up another level on the bar.
Well, that's a great intro. Thank you. So for those of you who are not familiar with Rebuilding Together Dayton, we are entering into our 26th year of serving our community for home rehab and modifications for low-income seniors. Last year, despite the pandemic, we reached more people and raised more money than ever. I gave a Rotary presentation entitled "When Home is Where the Hazard Is," because as everyone was basically stuck at home, our seniors were realizing, oh, I can't go anywhere else to use hot water, or I can't go anywhere else to have heat. So we were faced with an 86% decrease in volunteer hours last year. So we pivoted, and thanks to some CARES Act funding, we were able to hire quite a bit of contractors to get quite a bit of work done. So this year, as we head into our 26th National Rebuilding Day on the last Saturday in April, which is 3 weeks from Saturday, we are again targeting the Pineview and Lakeview neighborhoods. As Mike mentioned, last year we worked in Pineview, and I have to put my glasses on to see this. We did 2 programs. Now, we had to postpone our Rebuilding Day in April, but we did an event called Adopt a Block in July and National Neighborhood Promise Day in September. So Adopt a Block was mainly trying to get volunteers to do stuff outside, and skilled folks did a lot of inside work for homeowners. But we had 175 volunteers serving 492 hours, assisting 14 residents. By the overall bigger picture, 830 residents were served with our neighborhood-wide projects. We did clean up 4.1 tons of debris in 3 hours on our Neighborhood Promise Day with Republic Services. So we had done some door hangers on about 300 houses to let people know, hey, if you've done a lot of cleanup like I have in my basement or my garage, what do you do with all the stuff you want to get rid of? We'll come get it for you. So Republic Services volunteers came out and did that and literally cleaned out 4.1 tons of debris in about 3 hours time. So that was a huge departure from what we would ordinarily do, but I think we all noticed last year we did a lot of things differently. This year we're doing 10 homes in Pineview and Lakeview. They're pretty heavy houses as far as work scope goes. Interestingly, and I'm sure there's a lot more to this, but quite a few of our folks are in their 60s. We do have a 97-year-old that's helping our demographics a little bit, but a lot of them are suffering from cancer and are not physically and financially able to make the repairs and modifications needed on their homes. So some of them are in the process of treatment. Some of them have completed treatment, but 9 women, 1 man. The man is a veteran. We expect around 300 volunteers on Saturday, the 24th. We have about 150 Mormon youth coming from out of town wanting to do a neighborhood cleanup. So we've shifted our hours to 8 to 1 so that if you've ever worked on Rebuilding Day, afternoon shift tends to get a little sparse. People might be all gung-ho in the morning and then they get lunch and they get a little worn out and they head off for home. So we can keep them working from 8 to 1. We can get a lot of work done. I think really low numbers of house captains this year. We had to get a couple guys to take on more than 1 house because some companies are not permitting their employees to do work under the name of the company. So for example, like Booz Allen Hamilton always provides a house captain. They're not officially providing one this year. Folks at the base are doing stuff on their own time. So we're just doing what we can with what we have. But like Mike said, it was great to work with the land bank. They helped identify homeowners. They have the best maps known to mankind. I am so jealous of their software, but Mike is very generous in sharing all that information with us. But again, Citywide Development is a great partner of ours. We have stuck with the HUD Choice neighborhoods for the past few years. Historically, Rebuilding Day has been always in the city of Dayton. When we started in '96, we did just historic districts. And that was basically because we were started by Preservation Dayton. So I live in Dayton View Historic. I picked a house on Grand Avenue. So in 1996, we did 8 historic projects. In 97, we did 12 houses across the city. 98, we did 17 houses. And at that point, the board said, look, this is getting bigger than we had expected. We need to hire somebody to manage this. That's when I got hired on as the first staff person in 1998. So we took the program year round in 2000. We went countywide. So if you think we are only the last Saturday in April, that is our signature event, but Neighbor Care works year round throughout the county on skilled projects, and Seasonal Safe at Home works year round throughout the county on volunteer projects. So I think we did 960 repairs and modifications last year for, I tried to find the stats on my phone, but I didn't get to it in time, for over 150 households in 2020. So Heat the Town is our fall event where we do furnace clean and tunes and water heater replacement and repairs. The number of people living without heat, I have to read you, I did get a note in the mail literally today, I'm not making this up. We got a statement of satisfaction in the mail today from a gentleman. I know you all know, and a lot of times firsthand, what we're up against, but most people don't. I just can't imagine this. The PS was, thanks a million. Because of you good people, I now have hot water, a flushable toilet, and as of last month, a new furnace, meaning I now have reliable heat, something I haven't had in almost 10 years. Your efforts are very much appreciated. So it's those notes that reiterate and reinforce why we're doing what we're doing, and make some of the challenges a little more palatable. But our goal is to go out of business, to have every single house have hot water and heat, but 10,000 people are turning 65 every day in this country, and I don't see it slowing down at all. I honestly, it's getting bigger and bigger. So partnerships with folks like the Land Bank have been so helpful in identifying and targeting and harnessing the efforts, like Mike said on that slide, all the different partners. You know, that's just scratching the surface of what the Land Bank has been, who they work with and who we work with. So there are so many organizations. Verletta and I go back 20 years. I love seeing her face on the screen because I haven't seen her in so long, but Verletta has been a huge help to us. We've targeted the Caroline neighborhood, the Edgemont neighborhood. At Westwood, we did Westwood for 3 years. And honestly, that came up from a conversation with a police officer friend of mine who was, he had a daughter the same age as my oldest at CJ, working on a project with the CJ students. And Paul Saunders said, why are you guys working on this house? And I thought it was kind of obvious. I looked around the house and I'm like, why wouldn't we be working on this house? And he said, no, why are you over here versus why are you not in Westwood? And I said, well, the majority of our applications come from the 17 zip code. We do a lot of work over there, but at that point we hadn't targeted a specific neighborhood before. So once we started digging a little deeper, we partnered with the initiative in Westwood with UD and the Juvenile Probation Department and the Police Department. And there's 25 stakeholders that worked in Westwood. And when you see that they have the worst infant mortality and the highest number of juveniles on probation and the worst unemployment rate, you know, what we can't help that component, we can look at housing. We can work with seniors who might need Meals on Wheels or who might need a home health aide or might need a social worker. So, but when you partner everybody together who has the pieces to the puzzle, that's the impact that you can make. So that's what we do. You know, we try to look at beyond the house, like Mike said, look at the neighborhood. Where are the vacant lots? What can we do to the vacant lots? Can we do a park? Can we do a community garden? Can we install security lights in the alleys? Can we fix house numbers on people's houses so that emergency crews can see them more clearly? Can we do a big neighborhood cleanup? You know, Lakeview, we're doing a huge cleanup in Lakeview because of the dumping issue in Lakeview. So that's where people are comfortable with this year, working outside, spread out over the course of the neighborhood. So ideally, we would be doing 25 houses. We missed our 25th anniversary that last year, doing 25 houses on April 25th. But in lieu of that, we're doing what we can, and we're trying to make an impact wherever we can.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Amy, both for sharing your work. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Such incredible. One thing I always try to highlight and celebrate is sometimes in church worlds, we make the error of using the term ministry if it's something we're doing in the church, and then it's just like other work if it's not. And that's, I think all of us on the screen know that's an error, that the work that you're doing is a huge part of the ministry within this city, whether even that's a title other people put on it or not. So thank you for pouring your hearts and your excellence into your work. At this time, Jay and I just wanted to provide opportunity for anybody to ask questions about just what you do, or maybe what some of these connection points between the church community at large and the work that you're doing is. We'll have future conversations just kind of continuing to digest this information and bring some plans together. But maybe an obvious one that I'll kick us off with is, if churches are looking for just a place to get volunteers engaged, Amy, you have some pretty direct access points in that regard, correct?
Churches have always been a challenge of ours where I think we're missing the mark. I get my church, First Baptist Church. I get Shiloh Church. After that, it's loosey-goosey. I don't know what the secret sauce is to get a coalition of churches to come out and help. Churches provide so many different resources. They have skills, some have funding, they have the passion to help. So if there's any way we could harness that component of this community, I am all ears. We have a minister on our board. He's relatively new to the community, but I just feel like there are so many opportunities that we have out there. And we're not limited to Rebuilding Day for people to come out and help. We do projects throughout the summer and into the fall. So if anybody needs to put together a group to go out and do something, we're open to that as well. But I really feel like that's a huge opportunity for us, is the church angle.
Awesome. And could a church identify a property and then work with you in collaboration to help, or do you have yours all planned out throughout the year?
Well, that's a very good question. We do have a backlog. We have like 100 people always in the pipeline who need help. Churches have brought people to us before, understanding that it's Montgomery County, owner occupied, 60 plus, income qualified, current on their taxes, or on a payment plan. I mean, as long as they meet our criteria, then that's something we can discuss, because our funding sources restrict us to doing just those types of projects. So we're happy to discuss that.
Right, perfect. Other questions from anybody for either Mike or Amy?
It's exciting to see the progress and work that you do. It's just thrilling. And as I was listening to Mike talk about the Pineview area and a number of the seniors or the aging population that would be moving out, or possibly, I'm thinking, now, did they stay in the neighborhood? And I just wondered if we got any displaced seniors as a result of that work.
Vanessa, I'm not aware that we've actually displaced anybody. The work that we did, the timing of it came just before COVID. And I think largely the entire population is kind of hunkered down. And of course, that's why there's not many houses on the market at this point in time. Our interest is not in displacing them. Our interest is really more in creating wealth in the asset that they hold there, so that when they do decide to move, they're going to get a greater return on their investment, right, from the years of being there, and then have greater chance of being mobile. I suspect that that many of the folks that are there are going to be happy just to stay there and age in place. So it's not, certainly not our intent to try and push anybody out of the neighborhood. It's just if that time comes and they have to move, if you have to sell your house for $11,000, where are you going to go?
Exactly. That's awesome. Okay, thank you.
So moving forward, we're wanting to start and are currently remodeling the Dayton Dream Center, which is 2720 East 3rd Street. And there's a lot of houses around that area that really need to be rehab. Some that could be repurposed or even made into a green space, parking, whatever. And so how do we reach out to you, connect with you so that we can meet and find out what we can do and start either purchasing and remodeling homes or figuring out how we can make that transition?
Sure. I just responded to your chat. I'm sorry, I'm slow with that stuff. I'm old school still. Oh, there's a message here. Yeah, I think a conversation with you and your team, independent of this one, would be a good place for us to start understanding the geography there. Where is this? I know you gave me an address there. We could take a look. This is something we do quite frequently, not necessarily with a church necessarily, but with investors and so forth, to see. And effectively, we go through a process to evaluate how it is we might be able to help.
Awesome.
There are limits on our authorities under the law. There are limits on our use of financial resources, our ability to acquire property, I'll call it our intellectual property, our knowledge of distressed real estate and how to untangle that. That's free, unless we got to bring an attorney into it. We can suggest ways in which you might be able to acquire property. So it really, we need to where I always like to start with folks is, what's the vision? Where do you want to go with this? Where would you like to be at the end? Where are the objectives that you have for this? And then we can begin to look at the real estate surrounding that geography. And then we can say, well, for example, in this particular area, there are 10 parcels that are tax delinquent. Would acquiring these be of any value to your vision? Because not everything in close proximity is going to be delinquent that we can acquire. Some of it's going to have to be done through the market. You have to buy them, right? Just typical means. So we can share with that. And is that a value? Is that helpful in moving things forward for your organization? If it is, then we'll do another layer of what we call diligence, i.e., okay, they may be tax delinquent, but is there somebody in there, and we don't want to, push people out of their home. So is it vacant, abandoned, meet certain criteria? There's things like that we can do to help piece the plan for you together. And oftentimes these are long-term relationships, you're taking advantage of opportunities as they present themselves. Maybe your vision is not in a specific geography, maybe it's broader. We worked with folks who, are talking about neighborhoods. And by the way, I'm not exactly sure the address that you've got there, how close it is, but we're involved in the Huffman neighborhood. Okay. So I thought it might be. So, we're already in the neighborhood. If this might be something that just expands upon what we're doing, and there's costs to certain things, foreclosure proceedings, there's legal costs sometimes, things like that. But we can talk all that through. What can we deliver? What's your vision? And then we just look at, okay, and from a distressed real estate property standpoint, what is it that we can do to help facilitate that? The other thing we'll do, and Verletta being on this is perfect, is we'll check in with the local community. In this case, Dayton. We'll say, hey, Verletta, we've got this particular church or a particular developer or particular whoever it is that is an interest in doing this in this neighborhood, in this geography. Is that consistent with where the city sees that area going? right? So there's a coordination component to what we do to make sure that we're not, I call it playing in the city sandbox. You know, there's, Valletta knows what's going on in the neighborhood. She knows the people in Pineview, you know, she can name them. We don't. Our sandbox is a whole county. So we want to respect that. So we see the city as our client in this case, and we'd say, okay, you know, this is the idea. We think we can help perhaps in a certain way. Does that fit where you want to go?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Sure.
I try not to get too political, but I did throw something in the chat.
Nice. It was good.
Any other questions?
Hold on. No, you don't. No. No. Pastor, no, y'all cut it out.
Yes.
Okay, so anyway, we got to turn this meeting around real quick. I see we headed off the road. It is, Amy, you put out my years, 20 years. It has been, and I'll say to everybody that's just meeting Mike and Amy, I just want to tell you they're a great team to work with, and they have done awesome in our community. If you have not had the opportunity to work with them, and yes, we all work together in our big sandbox, except for, you know, those 3 comments. Yeah, don't worry about that. Y'all just put that out your mind. All right, thank y'all. See, that's how you get me to see if she paying attention.
That's right.
That's right. I'm paying attention. I ain't slow. I told them when they come in, I'm like, listen, I gotta pay attention.
That's right.
Caleb will get me. All right, I'm good. But
You,
no,
you were ready for it though. You were on it.
yeah, listen, it is awesome to work with the 2 of them, and I think there are great opportunities to help out our residents in each one of them. Honestly, yes. Even though Mike didn't come down the hill, and I told him to hit a couple of houses, but it's okay. I got you, Mike.
Hey, Caleb, as we're beginning to wrap up, do you mind if I just kind of make a comment on, you know, one of the key drivers for MVLF?
Yeah, go for it.
When you know, one of the things that really interested me in trying to sponsor this or pull this together was really what Miami Valley Leadership Foundation is all about, and it's regarding the Wheel of Change, and the Wheel of Change is really part of our purpose, and there's 3 functions to it. Number 1, it's engaging leaders of good faith and goodwill. And everyone on this call today fits into that bucket, right? You know, engaging leaders of good faith and goodwill. Number 2, building the capacity of others. And when I think of Mike and I think of Amy and I think of the churches just around Montgomery County and the Miami Valley, there are huge resources available to build the capacity of others. And think of the great work that Amy's doing and what could get accomplished if we could come around her. The church could come around here, not just 2 churches. How about 24 churches, right? Think of the great work that could get done if we could build the capacity of existing organizations in this area. And then, you know, formalizing that through the 3rd function, and that's developing joint initiatives. You know, what we're brainstorming today really is the beginning of a joint initiative to move organizations into collective impact, and it's powerful, right? So that's really the value of what we're attempting to do today, is just get these individuals connected to, you know, just unlimited resources throughout our community. And so I'm excited to try to facilitate that. That's what Caleb is doing. Caleb's trying to facilitate that as well. And so, Caleb, if you want to wrap up with any further comments, I think we're pretty much done for today.
Yeah. I guess one final question. Last call, what led to this, just the conversation came up as we were asking as members, representatives of a number of different churches, is where are some needs and where are ways we can get involved and connect and help meet those needs. And housing was one of the issues that came up. One of the questions that we had is we wanted to connect with others who honestly had more information on the housing scene in the city of Dayton and Montgomery County than we did. So that's partly why you're here, and thank you for being here. But one question that I know at least I had was, when you think about challenges with housing stability in the city of Dayton, is there currently a shortage of affordable housing? So is it the number of units, is the number of units need to increase, or is maybe a bigger need even with the churches connecting to help individuals and families with job stability and things like that? Is it housing there and they simply can't afford it, so it's job stability, or is it a lack of housing itself, if that makes sense? So
That's a big question.
Amy, I don't know the answer, so wasn't sure if any of you do.
I like the latter part of it.
The latter part of it referring to,
Having churches build the wealth with their parishioners, their members, to build into housing.
right.
That's
Things like both the Hope Center and the Dream Center, I believe, is a big part of the mission, right? Is job training elements, and obviously MVLF with mentoring. So many pieces that I'll connect with that. And Lee and Pastor Pat, that's a big piece of your vision, obviously, with Dream Center as well.
Yes, it is. And that's a great question too. Is do we have a housing shortage of available affordable housing for folks, or is the biggest need rehab? I don't know which one would. It's probably both. I think Amy shook her head that it was really both. It's easier on the rehab side of things to get volunteer hands on it and actually make it habitable. Maybe was our point a little bit earlier, but there's certainly some around the Dream Center. As a matter of fact, I think some probably would have said Dream Center should have been torn down, but we're in the process now of remodeling all of that and targeting the entire neighborhood down through there. So quite a bit of work to be done. Whether it's habitable or not, I guess I need an engineer down there to take a look at some of that. But any case, the collaboration I ask in the chat, is there a list of available properties that you all are working on right now where we could say, okay, well, we can help you with this? You'd mentioned, Mike, about the Huffman neighborhood and so forth. You're already established there and so forth. That's just a few blocks away, honestly. So fairly easy to get volunteer coordination heading in that direction and start to spruce things up.
It's interesting. I don't want to dominate the conversation here about Huffman, but Huffman has a fairly strong market demand there. So we expect that market rates will prevail there. The dollar per square foot, investors are able to put substantial improvements into those. That will spill over the street, because I think you're on the other side of the street, aren't you, from Huffman, on the north side?
It's 3rd and Monmouth Street is the address where all of that's at. So
okay,
yeah.
So I think there's probably opportunities over there. I mean, we'd love to see the momentum that we're trying to generate in momentum, or that already exists in Huffman. We're trying to build on that momentum, put it that way. Spill across the street to the north side, and then if you all are a player in that, wish to be a player in all of that, I think we can work with that. So it's just a matter of coordinating and determining what role exactly it is we can play. Directly to your question, in terms of the properties that we have, there is an investor program. The DIY program is on our website. So you can actually go to our website and you can see we'll have houses posted there. I don't know that that's really the way you want to go. I don't know that that's the way we want to engage with you, or you want to engage with us, because that's sort of an open offering type. We're taking the highest offer. The properties are found by our staff. They're triaged. They believe they can be renovated at or below market, so that somebody can go in and make an investment and get a return on it. So the market will drive it if we can clean up the title on it. But they're all over the community. They're not necessarily in that geography. Huffman, we're going to do a real concentrated effort, but in parallel with that, we could go across the street and look at those properties that are, again, tax delinquent, vacant, abandoned, and begin to target some of those properties that might go into the work program that you're talking about.
Excellent. I do want to honor people's time on here. Thank you all for being here. Mike and Amy, thank you. Are you both comfortable with me putting your email addresses in the follow-up to this group so that follow-up conversation can happen?
Yes.
Excellent.
I actually already put it in the chat. I think.
Oh,
Amy did
perfect.
too. Yeah.
Got it.
All right, we will get that out. Thank you all for being on here. And my gut is that the opportunity for this kind of collaboration is going to increase as there are quite a few renters in particular that are still benefiting from some of the rental deferrals of what's been going on with COVID, that at some point as things continue to shift there, I think there will be opportunities for serving. I guess I'll just put it that way, for us to keep putting our heads together and collaborate and be God's people together and partnering across various sectors. So let's continue to build those relationships. Thank you, Mike and Amy. Thank you all for being here. Jay, any final word as we sign off?
No, thank you for attending.
All right, excellent. Vanessa Ward, would you, Mike and Amy, if you're comfortable, could we have Vanessa Ward just pray over both of you and the work that you do as we go?
Sure.
I'd be happy to. Almighty God, we just thank you for the vision of these two individual people, the work that they do that is beyond just an activity, but it is actually ministry that is going forth and making a difference in so many people's lives. And we just pray for continued strength and for wisdom and for every blessing of your anointing on them as they touch the lives of others. And thank you for allowing them to share with us so wonderfully. And we just expect great things because nothing you do is in vain. So thank you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you
Thank
all. God
you.
bless.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.